Tom Clark's 6M podcast is a Boink Studios production. And now, on with the show. Hey, what is up? Welcome to Tom Clark's 6M podcast. I'm your host, Tom Clark, and in this episode I'm joined by co-host Phil Lindsey. From the world of basketball comes one of the most popular players of all time with unrivaled talent and unmatchable heart, competing at a high level and finding success, all the while battling critics due to his personal issues off the court. We're talking about Allen Iverson. Allen Iverson is one of the most legendary point guards to ever play the game. An outstanding Bethel High School football player, Iverson began playing basketball and eventually led both teams to Virginia State championships. He was recognized as the AP High School Player of the Year in both sports. Iverson was being heavily scouted by several colleges until his arrest in 1993 for an altercation in a bowling alley. Though he was seen leaving the bowling alley on video as the fight broke out, AI and three of his friends were arrested and stood trial, with Iverson being tried as an adult and eventually convicted. He served 4 months before being granted clemency by the governor. Iverson came out of the situation with seemingly no shot at college until his mother pleaded his case to Georgetown University basketball coach John Thompson, who offered Iverson a 4-year scholarship to play for him. Iverson became a star at Georgetown, where he was the Big East Rookie of the Year for the 1994-1995 season. Iverson led the team to the Big East Championship in his second year and declared himself for the NBA draft in 1996. Allen was drafted to the Philadelphia 76ers, where he spent the first 10 years of his professional career. AI found huge success in the NBA, where he was Rookie of the Year, a 4-time NBA scoring champion, 11-time NBA All-Star, 3-time steals leader, and league MVP. His MVP came for the 2000-2001 season, which saw the 76ers go 58-26, winning the Eastern Conference Finals and going to the NBA Finals against the Los Angeles Lakers. Though the Lakers were the favorites to win, Iverson's Sixers won the first game, putting LA on notice. The Lakers won the series, however, marking the only time that Iverson ever appeared in the finals. Iverson spent the last part of his career playing for different teams. He went from Philly to the Denver Nuggets, to the Detroit Pistons, to the Memphis Grizzlies. He eventually returned to the 76ers, where he ultimately retired from the NBA in 2013. Iverson joined the Basketball Hall of Fame in 2016. Allen Iverson is highly regarded by his peers, coaches, and NBA fans as one of the best guards to ever play the game. His undeniable talent, tremendous heart, and trend-setting influence made him a legend in the sport, which continues to feel his impact today. And that's the lowdown on Allen Iverson. I'm a big fan of the show Ted Lasso, which is an Apple TV original. And in season 1 of the show, and I'll backtrack for a second. For anybody that doesn't know what this show is about, I highly recommend it. It is very well done. Jason Sudeikis is the star of it. And he stars as this high school / college football coach who gets recruited to coach a soccer team in England. Sounds far-fetched, but it's a comedy, so it's all good. There's so much heart in this show. It is crazy. It's so well written, so well acted. It's up for like all kinds of awards, and I hope it wins everything because it's so well done. I'm a huge fan of the show, in case you can't tell. But in season 1, there's a scene where he's in the locker room, and one of their players, who's like their star player, he's their guy. Everyone else is good to okay, or okay to good, I guess you could say. But this kid is their star. He's very egotistical. He's very conceited and whatnot. And he doesn't want to practice. And he claims his foot's hurting or whatever, but you can just tell this guy, he's all about me, doesn't care about the team. It's all about him. He sure doesn't care about the coach. So Ted Lasso comes out, and then Ted often goes into pop culture references that have nothing to do with the game, as I tend to do here on the show. And he gives we talking about practice speech. And at first I thought, well, someone in the locker room is going to get that this is Allen Iverson's speech from the press conference. No one got it. And a couple of seconds into it, I thought, okay, where's the punchline? When does it start to get funny? It never got funny. Jason Sudeikis delivered the practice speech straight-faced, never cracked a smile. It wasn't meant to be humorous. And when it was over, I was like, wow, that's freaking great. And I don't know what the intention was of that moment in the show, but for me, in my head, I'm thinking, take away the fact that Iverson said it. Take it out of the environment of the NBA and what people thought about him at the time, the misconceptions about him as a person, and just take what he said and apply it to a different situation. And it was great. I highly recommend everyone going to look that up on YouTube as soon as possible. It's fantastic. But it got me thinking about Iverson because, as I said, Sudeikis killed it, and you just think, well, this is supposed to be funny. It's not funny. Going back and watching the press conference through those different glasses, so to speak, it hit me very different years later that this guy was legit upset. This wasn't supposed to be the punchline of the day, although it made the rounds on the late night talk shows and a bunch of people had fun with it, and people to this day mock it and not, maybe not make fun of him, but the situation or whatnot. But it put the name Allen Iverson back into my head in a big bad way. And I just really started thinking about it. It made me go look up some of his stuff. And then you and I, after recording a show, we just started talking about him. And I don't remember if it was you or me, but one of us said, let's just do Allen Iverson. I was like, dude, I'm down. Let's do this. Going back and looking at his game, Phil, looking at highlights and stuff, I'll get a good blanket statement from you here to kick it off. What do you think made Iverson such a special player? If you had to ballpark it for me, what do you think?
I mean, I think there's a lot to be said about just how different he was, and it wasn't just that he was just this phenomenal scorer. I mean, off the top of my head, he's one of the only rookies that I can think of that scored 50 points his rookie year, which is
Right.
insane. I mean, there's a list of them, I'm sure, but like in terms of modern players, he's one of the only guys I can think of that put up those kind of points in his rookie year. And I mean, of course, the crossover, um, just being able to get to the basket as small as he was like 6 feet, and that's probably being generous saying he's 6 feet. Um, well under 180 pounds. He's around 160 pounds, and he'd get to the basket and still manage to finish at the basket. Just insane watching this guy play. He's one of the fastest guys I've ever seen getting up and down the court. Just watching him, I like watching him. Is just he's one of the most entertaining players I've ever watched play basketball.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you nailed it. The last line you could have started in with that. You're totally right. Entertaining, but not in the sense of a Dennis Rodman entertaining or a Magic Johnson even. Well, it's Showtime Lakers, folks. That wasn't him. His hard work. I mean, I often compare him to CM Punk of the NBA, where he did it his way. He didn't care what you thought. He knew what the company line was, and he told it when he had to. But he was his own man when he came in. He was his own man when he left. And I got a massive amount of respect for AI because of that very reason. You talked about what he could do on the court, how incredibly fast he was. I second that. Crazy fast. And dude, a thief, which is something that I don't recall if he was so good at steals that when he first got in the league, or did he develop that over time, or do you remember how that played out? Because man, he was great at it.
I mean, he averaged around 3 steals a game in college. I think he was a All NBA, All Defensive. I mean, team for college. I'm trying to remember. I know he's led the league in steals more than once. Um, but yeah, I think he averaged roughly around 2 steals a game.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, just watching him play, there was always the threat of it. I mean, anytime they scored or missed or whatever, and the ball went back down the court, I mean, the other team couldn't relax. If Iverson was on the court, you could not relax because he'd backdoor take the ball from you. And dude, it would happen so fast. Either he would take it all the way back down the court or he would fire it down the court or whatever. But my God, there were so many plays where if you blinked, you'd miss it. I
Yeah, I
mean,
mean, he
crazy.
he was one of the first guys I've seen that played the passing lane like he did. Like if there was a ball that was coming across, you think this is like just a regular pass. He just dart out of nowhere and knock it out of the air and just be going up court with it.
Yeah. crazy, man. I mean, one of the best to ever play his position. I mean, yeah, if you really wanted to argue brass tacks, you could argue and say that I don't know about the best of all time to play point guard / shooting guard. I mean, I guess if you wanted to make that argument, you could try. There's a lot of great guys that have come through the league that have played that very spot. And that might be a tough argument, but man, you'd have to say, would you say top 10 or would you narrow it down even farther than that?
No, he's definitely got to be one of the top 10 guards of all time. I would say, when we were talking about Jordan and how Jordan revolutionized basketball, it went from a big man's game to like a smaller guy's game. Um, I would say Iverson ushered in an era of guard dominant teams because before him, there weren't that many um, guards that won MVP. Now you've got so many point guards that are just like either ball dominant guys or score first guys, or you have so many teams that are predicated on how well their guard play is.
And do you think that, and it's funny you mentioned, the Jordan thing about how it's no longer a big man's game, and you're 100% right. Do you think that Iverson's rise in the league and his success was a natural progression of the evolution of it going from the big lumbering all-star, you feed him the ball, he's not very mobile, he's you know, he can get around some, but basically he just plants himself there. Or he can defend. He can kick the ball back out to the perimeter. I mean, is Iverson a natural evolution from the big guy to Jordan to his size?
Yeah, I would say after Jordan, he was the next most influential player. Just how much he changed guard play, just how much he changed the perception of what a basketball player looked like. Um, just how much he changed the style around basketball, just the entire culture of it. Uh, you'd be hard pressed to find anybody right after Jordan in the late '90s that did more to change basketball than him.
I think you're right about that. I mean, even if you challenged me directly and said, "Think of someone," I I mean, I can't. I've actually in my head went there before, and I'm like, I don't really think I've got anybody. I mean, I don't know. You could say Vince Carter to a certain degree, maybe. I don't know if he revolutionized his spot. I mean, Vince was as Showtime as they come, um, and knew how to entertain a crowd, knew how to get the job done. But it's still not the same thing as Iverson. I mean, Iverson was one of those guys that could put the entire team on his back. I don't know that Carter ever did that. To be fair. So I don't know. I think you're right. I mean, right after Jordan, I think AI is it. Uh, right off the bat, we're going to shoot some stats here to you. His MVP award came in 2001. We'll get to that season. I can't wait to talk about that season. Just great stuff. 11-time All Star, 2-time All Star Game MVP in 2010. Excuse me, 2001, 2005. 3-time All NBA first team, 3-time All NBA second team, All NBA third team, NBA Rookie of the Year, no small feat, NBA All Rookie first team, NBA Rookie Game MVP, 4-time NBA scoring champion at his size, right? 4-time NBA scoring champion, scoring at will, 99, 2001, 2002, 2005. And back to the steals part of this, 3-time NBA steals leader, 2001 to 2003. So, yeah, uh, those years consecutively. Number 3, retired by the Philadelphia 76ers. Um, that's a Hall of Fame career. And we do know he did get in the Hall of Fame in 2016. And another recommended bit of viewing, besides the Ted Lasso bit, which doesn't seem to fit, but I promise you it does, is Allen Iverson's Hall of Fame acceptance speech. I had tears in my eyes. I'm not going to lie. He was I can't even, if I talk about it too much, I'll get emotional. He was so emotional in that speech, man. And oh my God, just a guy who was completely deconstructed. And not often you get to see Iverson deconstructed. I mean, his guard was up for a lot of years because it had to be out of necessity because of how he was attacked all the time. Here's a general question, man. Can you think of another player, since we're talking extremes here, can you think of another player besides Dennis who was as targeted as much as Iverson at that time?
Mm, in basketball, ah, No.
It's hard, right?
I think he was one of the most polarizing basketball players of that era for sure. Um, I mean, you got other guys like maybe Gilbert Arenas, but like Gilbert Arenas still wasn't as talked about as Iverson was. I mean, Iverson
Right.
came straight in the lead with controversy. Um,
Latrell Sprewell, maybe.
yeah,
But that was maybe two incidents ever.
yeah,
And it was pretty egregious. I mean, so and plus it was directly connected to the game. Iverson's
right.
mishaps were off the court in his personal life. Stress the word personal here, kids. But as we know, if you're a public figure, Phil, whether it's fair or not, your life is going to get dragged into the press all the time. I mean, put me in that spot, and I have a tendency to buck anyway. I kind of always have. And my number one go to is sarcasm. It's not anger so much as it is sarcasm. And if I'm overly sarcastic with somebody and they don't know me, they have no idea that I'm hating on them. They have no clue. But then later, once they get to know me, it becomes, good God, you were mad yesterday. Because they could tell, because that's how I come off. Put me in Iverson's spot. I don't know that I would have been able to play nice either. I mean, looking back on it, hindsight's 2020, right? I mean, how much of that stuff do you think he handled the way he should have? I mean, how many times should he maybe have not responded? I mean, did he not have a choice at the time? And I mean, was it like, poking the bee's nest, so to speak, with him?
Well, he was very young when he first came in the league, and
Very true.
he came in the league with a lot going against him straight away.
Mm,
And that's not to make an excuse for some of his behavior. Some of his behavior, he probably, looking back on it, I'm sure he regrets some of it. But I just think that some of it was people came down on him a little bit too hard for certain things. I mean, coming down on him for the way he dressed, or you know, certain things like him being late, or all these other things that other players do as well. But he was an easy target because he looked different, um, and he changed the culture of basketball so much. He changed the culture of basketball from having to be this clean cut, um, kind of mythical figure among men, and being this down to earth guy that could be anywhere. And I think that that is what made him so special in a lot of ways. Other than the fact that he was just a phenomenal basketball player, is that he just was so relatable. Like you could see him. If you didn't see yourself in Iverson, you definitely knew somebody that was like Iverson.
yeah.
And it wasn't like, again, to bring up Jordan. And Jordan was, when he was the face of the league, Jordan was so good that it was like it just didn't seem real. Like it was just like, how is this guy doing all this stuff? And then you would see him in the interviews, and he'd be really well dressed. He spoke well. He always had all of the great ad campaigns behind him. Everything was super polished. And Iverson, on the other hand, he just looked like another guy. He looked like a regular guy. He was a small
Yeah.
guy. Um, he just dressed the way he wanted. He listened to the music he wanted. Um, he just looked like us. I mean, for a lot of black people watching it, it was just like, no, this is us. Like this is the closest representation of us that there is. And I think for me, that's why I never liked how hard people came down on him. It was like, well, he's just being himself. I mean, I don't think he's harming anybody. So what's the problem?
Yeah, just doing things his way. And I'm gonna go back to my pro wrestling analogy before. I mean, if Iverson was the CM Punk of the NBA, then process elimination. Jordan's kind of the John Cena. Uh, the polished face of the league. He's the guy. He's the one that they're putting at the forefront. And then you've got Iverson who's kind of doing it his way, and Punk not disrespecting Cena, much in the same way Iverson never disrespected Jordan, completely looked up to him. And you're talking about how Jordan didn't seem real. It seemed like, God, was this guy built? Was he constructed in a lab somewhere? Because good God, I mean, perfect physique, perfect, like very eloquent, sharp dressed guy. His game was incredible, off the charts, as we've covered here before. But during Iverson's acceptance speech at the Hall of Fame, he said the first time, you know where I'm going, right? He said the first time he stepped on the court with Jordan, he's like, man, there's Jordan. Look at him. He doesn't look real. He's like, and he's wearing Jordans, and everybody started laughing. And he's like, he related it to the story of Chappelle's show when he talked about meeting Rick James, where there was an aura around him. You could visibly see Rick James' aura around him. And he said that was with Jordan. You could physically see the aura around this guy. And I love that at his best, Iverson is still a fan. He's still a kid. Those moments where, you know, like I said before, he can let his guard down. He can kind of let you in. And again, like you said, man, make you feel like that, hey man, I'm just one of you guys. That's all I am. I'm a kid who came from a tough upbringing and things were hard for me, but you know, I did the best I could with what I had and I made it. John Thompson, his coach at Georgetown, was very cautious of Iverson going pro too soon. He didn't stop him, didn't try to stop him, but because he understood the situation, financially speaking, all that stuff, which a lot of guys go through, and I totally get that. But his number one concern was you're going to go from no money to a ton of money. Can you handle yourself in front of the press? Can you handle your life? Can you handle when people who call themselves your friends worm their way into your life only because they want something from you? And then fast forward X number of years later, things are unraveling for him, his personal life, off the court, stuff he's getting mixed up with, the way the press is coming after him. Maybe he doesn't handle it too well. And then you're like, ooh, man, maybe coach had a point. I mean, how dead on do you think Thompson was in that with the advice he was giving Iverson at the time?
Um, well, you know, John had played. You know, rest in peace to John Thompson. Um,
Yes.
he had played in the league, so he had already seen it. He had seen numerous other college players come through Georgetown, and he vouched for a lot of other guys. Um, so I think he understood. He knew where Iverson was coming from, and he knew how tough it would be for him. Um, but man, I mean, just looking at that whole story in itself, and just everything that John Thompson did for him, it's just so commendable. Taking a chance on Iverson when nobody else would, and helping him to, you know, rejuvenate his career and just reinvent himself in Georgetown. You know, Iverson has said on several occasions that he wouldn't be who he was. He wouldn't have been a Hall of Famer. He wouldn't have made it to the Sixers or any of that if it wasn't for John Thompson. Um, and so I think John Thompson had his best interest at heart. I think he always did. He talked about how they would call and talk to each other way after he left Georgetown. And they still had kept a close connection, even like all the way up to like his last moments before he passed away.
Oh wow. I mean, definitely a father figure for him. And Iverson's biological dad was not in the picture, but he during the speech he was talking about the man that raised him and essentially was his father, had been there for a lot of years. And he spoke highly of him. So Iverson did have a father figure there, but I'm sure that Thompson was that sort of replacement dad when he was away from home at college and on the road and playing games out of state or whatnot. And uh, you know, with his guys in class and all that stuff at school, and Thompson was there for him. I mean, that's, you know, forget basketball. I mean, that's important for any young man, but especially considering where he was coming from, the issues he had growing up, that kind of stuff. I mean, it was just, you know, to have a mentor there and sort of a guiding light for him. And Thompson's one of the most well-respected coaches of all time, and deservedly so. And you're right, to have him in his corner, that's a very big deal. Dude, I got to be honest with you, man. I've never really been a fan much of college ball. Living in North Carolina, I do, you know, gravitate toward the Tar Heels. Not only because of where I am, but because of Jordan also. Plus, so many great players have come out of UNC Chapel Hill. Insane. Hall of Fame guys, you know, over the years. So I can't tell you that I even knew Iverson's name before he got to the NBA. If I told you that, I'd be lying. But as soon as he got to the NBA, I don't know, man, there was just something about this guy that you could just see from a distance. Young, hungry, 1,000 miles an hour up and down the court, maximum effort every time. That old idea of, hey, I take a few plays off, that kind of thing. I don't know that I ever ever saw Iverson take a play or two off. That guy was, I mean, he stayed hurt all the time or beat and banged up. Well, I mean, we'll get there to the MVP season eventually here, but the fact that he never had serious injury with as fast as he went. I mean, I just recall Rodman going headfirst into steel chairs to get a rebound. I mean, Iverson was moving that fast, man. His speed was just off the charts. Incredible.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about a guy that came in and immediately made an impact. I mean, that game he's talking about with Jordan, that he, famously crossed Jordan in his game, which was just like,
Oh,
you just,
talk about that. That's great stuff.
I mean, you, first of all, we never see that many people get the better of Jordan on defense. And this guy not only crossed Jordan, but hits the shot after it. And I don't think people realize also, he had 37 points in that game.
Man.
I mean, this is a guy that I think he broke Chamberlain's record for the most 40-point games in their rookie year. He had like, because I think Chamberlain had two back to back, and Iverson had five consecutive games of 40 points in his rookie year. Uh, one of the, like I said, one of the first guys that I can think of off the top of my head that scored 50 points against Cleveland Cavaliers in his rookie year. So, I mean, he came in and immediately made a big impact.
He okay, so some quick 76ers franchise records, which I'm assuming these records still stand today, kids. Most points in the third quarter, 22 points in the third quarter. He did it 3 times. So he broke the record and matched his own record on 2 more occasions. Most field goals attempted in a half, which he's a shooter. You can't fault him for the most attempted. I mean, you don't score that many without attempting at least that many, right? Most free throws made in a game, 24, tied with Willie Burton. I couldn't even tell you who Willie Burton is, if I'm being honest. Most steals in a game with 9 steals in a game. Most steals in a quarter was 7. So the most steals he had in a game was 9, and 7 of them were in a quarter. Like,
Wow.
if you're the other team, you're calling timeout. Like, God, sit down. Everyone relax. We got to slow this kid down, right? My God, man. Insane. Most
Crazy.
made 3-point field goals at 885. Still a franchise record. Most attempted, and of course, yes, most attempted, which is quite a bit bigger. But listen, like I said before, you can't make an omelet without breaking some eggs, right? Most steals per game. 2.3 steals per game. Franchise record for the 76ers. I mean, I just can't. And career highs, since we're on the subject. 60-point career high versus the Magic, February 12, 2005. The most assists, 16 assists in a game, and did it twice.
Yeah. Wow.
I know.
I think he has something around like 11 50-point games. He's on the list of like the top 10 players.
Yeah, I think you're
Um,
right.
I mean, you look at some of his numbers, like they are crazy, and some of the people they're compared to for the time that he was in the league and just the amount of time that he was successful. Um, Man, I think he averaged around like almost 30 points a game in the playoffs, which is just. I'm sure he's averaged 30 points a game more than once because he he had 4 scoring titles, right?
Yes.
I know for sure he averaged 33 points a game at his peak, which is just like this is just wild. Like I said, for his height and just the position he played to put up that many points a game is crazy.
His career stats. His career now, kids. 26.7 points a game, 3.7 rebounds, 6.2 assists in a game. All right, for his career average per game. That's mind blowing to me. And the stats I just gave earlier were regular season stats. Playoffs. There's another quotable speech there for you. Wasn't it Herm Edwards that gave the playoffs? Yeah. Suddenly jumped in my head. Playoff career high, 55 points versus the Hornets in 2003. Playoff assists high 16 versus the Raptors in 2001. Playoff or steals a high of 10. 10 career steals in a game versus the Magic in 99. And career high 9 rebounds in a game in 2001. I mean, yeah, you would think, well, Tom, he's fast. Of course he's going to be hustling. Just because you're fast doesn't mean you're effective. You can be fast and be all over the place. This guy was an assassin in terms of, he was the blur, dude. He not only was he fast, he was deadly. He was very accurate. And it was, God, just get out of the guy's way. Before it's like he's like a thief in the night, man. He's been there and gone. You don't even know he's even been there. Like, wait, what just happened? That again, dude, I don't know. I think any player playing today, coming in the league today, would be drooling over the prospects of ending their career with these kind of numbers, man. That's insane.
Yeah, some of his career numbers are they're just unreal. I think he's only second to Jordan in terms of like average points per game in the playoffs.
Yeah,
which is a pretty good category to be in. Some of the games, like when you look at all of the greats that he's played, like Kobe. I mean, I mentioned earlier that he was rookie of the year. It's not like he was in a thin rookie class. He was in a rookie class with Kobe and like Stephon Marbury. This was a deep rookie class. He won rookie of the year in.
oh yeah.
Just some of those guys he played up against, he put up 30, 40 points on these guys. Again, coming out and putting 37 points up on Michael Jordan is crazy.
Yeah, how many people walking the planet right now could lay claim to that? Honest to God.
In your rookie year,
Yeah.
37 points on Michael Jordan.
Is he the only one, maybe?
I'm not sure. Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not sure, but once I was looking at things this weekend, and I looked at some of that game. I was just like, this is just like, what do you do with this guy, man? He was just. You'd see him run into a crowd sometimes of people in the paint, and you just think like, there's no way he's gonna get this ball up. He gets the ball up and puts English on it, and it ends up going in. It's like, huh? And sometimes he end up falling down, rolling all over the ground, and it just still sails in, and he ends up getting a free throw off of it.
And you made me curious. So the 96 draft. Oh, this is good. This is so good. I can't say that I've actually sat here and looked up draft classes over the years, but I'm already thinking, how do you beat this? We got Iverson, of course, pick number 1. At number 2, Marcus Camby.
Mm-hmm.
At number 3, Sharif Abdur-Rahim. At number 4, Stephon Marbury. At number 5, Ray Allen. Followed by Antoine Walker, Lorenzen Wright, Kerry Kittles, Samaki Walker, Eric Dampier, Todd Fuller, Vitaly Potapenko. Then a guy that you may know as Kobe Bryant is there. Went number 13 in the draft that year. Peja Stojakovic, Steve Nash, Jermaine O'Neal. Zadrunas Ilgauskas. Yeah. Derek Fisher, Jerome Williams. I'm just giving you the highlights of this draft, man. Like, yeah, a very deep class here. Very deep class, man. And again, to come out heads and shoulders. And, in a perfect world, your number 1 draft pick does walk away with all the accolades. That's why you drafted him number 1, because all the scouts said this guy's the big ticket. He's the one. He's what we're going to build the team around. But, dude, be honest. How often does the number 1 pick end the season with all the accolades? It happens, but, that's more of a rare thing anymore, isn't it?
Yeah, a lot of times, like, you've got guys that end up going number 1. Like, of course, you got like LeBron, number 1 pick, ends up going on, having a great season. A lot of these guys have great seasons, but again, to come out in your first year and post 50 points on a team is just Like it just seems like it's unheard of. I mean, I'm just trying to think off the top of my head. I know Wilt is one of them. Will Chamberlain. I think Brandon Jennings scored like 55 points in his rookie year. Um, but I can't think of that many other people that have made that big of a leap in terms of scoring right away. I mean, 'cause a lot of these guys, you give them some time to develop in that first year.
Because they're learning a new playbook. They're learning from the college game to the pros, which is, depending on the program you come from, it's not that easy of a transition. But man, he was like a fish to water in the NBA, dude. Did we ever see him have any bumps in his first couple of years in terms of, he missed that, or he read the defense wrong? No, dude, he was, good Lord, he just fit right in, didn't he?
Yeah, I mean, he was a pure scorer from right away. I mean, if anything, it was just the fact that he didn't have a great team around him.
That's always the key, isn't it? It's okay, we got this guy. He's going to be the man for us, going to build the team around him. And I will say this, to Philly's credit, it may have taken couple 2-3 years, but they did put a team around him. And I think sometimes, not just NBA but NFL as well, we'll see the number one pick, and then they start to make trades, and you're like, okay, yeah, this questionable trade, and then the team kind of doesn't really get there, and you're like, dude, you got the best player in the league. What's going on? But man, they went after it in Iverson's MVP season. They did put some fantastic players around him, guys who could help him, for lack of a better term, carry the ball. And since we're getting there, I'll tell you this. After the Bulls, Jackson goes to LA, and you know, you Phil, I know you hear critics over the years too. You live in Chicago. You've heard all kinds of stuff, I'm sure. Oh, well, Phil, of course Phil's successful. He got the Bulls with Jordan and Pippen. Oh, of course Phil's successful. He got the Lakers with Kobe and Shaq. I have never not given Phil Jackson credit. I don't know how you can't give Phil Jackson credit. The egos that exist on an NBA team. I mean, dude, the ego of Jordan, the competitive drive of Jordan, the egos of Shaq and Kobe constantly headbutting each other. I mean, one guy can bring peace to that, and it's the Zen master, dude. I mean, not to go off on a Chicago Bull thing here, but he did for the Lakers what he did for the Bulls, and he gave them I don't know, a kick in the right direction, maybe. What do you think he did for the Lakers to get them going in the right direction?
I think he definitely brought like some, discipline to the team. He brought structure to the team because I mean, there's already a well constructed team. You've got two of the best players you could possibly have in Shaq and Kobe, but then you've got pretty good shooters around them, and he managed to construct a offense that where all of them fit perfectly.
Role players. That's the key word here, folks. Role players. Putting the right guys in the right spots at the right time. I mean, it's very important. It's extremely important for so many reasons. You get a guy that's I don't know, dude. I think the word utility player could be taken wrong, or be like not giving enough credit where credit's due. I never looked at that word as being bad. I mean, if you have something you do very well and you can contribute and you can get quality time on the floor to contribute and do your part, then you're helping your team win. I don't see what the problem with that is. Not everybody is the main event guy. I mean, you got to have guys jerking the curtain. You got to have mid card guys, right? Not everyone's the main event spot of WrestleMania. I mean, you got to have the matches beforehand on the undercard too. So I think you're right, man. He knew where to put guys, how to best utilize them in the triangle offense, and made everything work. That's the team. This well constructed, well built, well run team of the Lakers that the Sixers ran into. And dude, Iverson didn't blink. It was like playing chicken with a Mack truck, and Iverson doesn't blink because he's not intimidated. And it would be easy to be intimidated by the Lakers. It'd be easy to look at the combo Shaq and Kobe and say, oh, God, we got our work cut out for us. I never saw hesitation out of this guy. He was fearless on the court, wasn't he?
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about a guy, like I said, that is smaller than everybody else on the floor. I think at the time he was one of the lightest players drafted, with like 160, and so he's getting in the lane with these guys that are like 7 footers and still like taking it straight to the basket.
Yeah, man, and fearless, and like you said, he was a lightweight at the time, and you would think that he would, and he did put on some muscle. It's not like he was, thin as a rail and stayed that way. He always stayed in great shape. I mean, for a guy that moves as fast as he does, you can't have a lot of body weight holding you down, or you won't be able to move that fast. I mean, his arms got better, and you could tell that he was really staying in shape all the time. But dude, looking at the roster of that 2001 team when Iverson had his MVP, I mean, going back over this list, man, it made me forgotten how much I'd really uh, just wowed at this team and how well they all play together. Rajah Bell, uh, Rodney Buford. You had Matt Geiger at center. I'd actually forgotten the name Matt Geiger. If you'd mentioned it to me out of the blue, I would have said, "Wait, he wasn't he the center for Iverson Sixers?" Because that's how I knew him. Tyrone Hill, Jermaine Jones. Did you know? Because I didn't know this. Tony Kukoc was on the Sixers roster during this run. Have I
Yes,
forgotten that?
yes,
How did I
I remember.
forget this, man? Did he get playing time during this that year?
Yeah, he was kind of old though. He wasn't, the Kukoc of old.
I'd forgotten that. I saw his name and I thought, good Lord, how did I not realize that? Todd McCulloch was the backup center. You had Vernon Maxwell, Aaron McKee, Rashawn McLeod, Anthony Miller, Nazar Muhammad, uh, Kevin Ollie, Theo Ratliff. Let's see who else. Pepe Sanchez and Eric Snow, and of course the big man at starting center. Let me retrace my steps here. Dikembe Mutombo. Dude, I was such a fan of Dikembe Mutombo. That finger wagging stuff, and they had threatened to call it technical, and he didn't care. And man, I've always been a fan of Mutombo. And I remember at the time the analysts were talking about, well, you got Shaq and Kobe versus Mutombo and Iverson. What a matchup, dude. What a matchup between those four guys, right?
Yeah. Um, yeah, it's just such an oddly constructed team, and you would think it wouldn't work, and it probably wouldn't have worked with anybody else but Iverson. But he carries so much of the scoring load, and he just relied on them to basically play great defense, and that's why you had Mutombo and you had guys like Ratliff. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think the second best scorer on that team scored around 15 points a game.
Wow.
Maybe that, if that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's, from a distance, if you don't know your NBA history, you may look at these names and say, well, I'm not sure. But as a unit, they played well and worked well together. And dude, everybody knew the deal. This is Allen's team. And the ball's going to be in his hands more often than not. Tom Clark's 6M podcast is sponsored in part by Radius Law Group. Every day, Radius helps individuals, families, small businesses, and nonprofit organizations throughout North Carolina, Florida, and Pennsylvania resolve their legal issues by providing effective legal counsel in the areas of estate planning, as well as elder law and Medicaid. Radius Law holds the radical belief that working with a lawyer can indeed be enjoyable. So give them a call at 1-800-519-5667 for more information and tell them that Tom Clark's 6M podcast sent you. When Phil, and I go back to Phil for a second, when Phil took over in Chicago, he brought the triangle offense as a way of getting the ball out of Michael's hands because other teams were starting to shut him down. Dude, there again, a lot of this particular episode is about going back into the memory banks. I don't recall if teams had an answer for the answer at the time for Iverson. I mean, do you recall that many teams really shutting him down on offense?
No, I mean, of course, you try and foul him and, try and, beat him up a little bit when he came in the lane and hope that he wouldn't come back, but he just would come back unfazed. Uh, of course, they brought the zone to try and slow him down.
Right.
And I mean, like the zone defense helped in a way, but again, this guy was still at his peak, averaging 33 points a game.
There's only so much you could do to him. You could drop a house on this guy, he'll still get out. I mean, he'll get back up and hustle down the court. We touched on this earlier, man. This guy was a walking mash unit in his MVP season. You could say that about the year before and the year after. Bruised, beaten, banged up, and you'd hear the news, well, Allen Iverson's questionable. And I'm like, shut up with that. There's no way this guy's not playing tonight. You're out of your mind or you're high on something illegal if you think that Iverson's not playing tonight. And sure enough, there he was on the roster. He's playing. And I want to say that there was something with one of his hands, a finger or something during the playoffs that year. And he's like, there's no way I'm not playing. Maybe I'm misremembering this, but I'm like, dude, you would have to, what's the Stone Cold line? You're going to have to kill me to be finished with me. That's him. Like, you're going to have to kill this guy to keep him off the court. I mean, heart. So much heart in his play, in his game. I mean, to me, that's one of the biggest differences between him and practically everyone on the court on any given night was the fact that I know no matter who he's playing against or with or whatever, what city they're in that night, he's going to be the one out hustling everybody. I mean, I don't know how you do better than that, man. So much heart for this game. It's crazy.
Yeah, I didn't. Yeah, he had a broken hand in the playoffs.
There you go. That's what it was.
He had one. He had his hand in a cast. It was just like around like his palm. It wasn't like all the way down his wrist. But he had a elbow injury. That's why he started wearing the sleeve
Right.
over his arm. He had another injury. I think he had like an ankle injury or something around the time.
Go down the list, man, because it's a list.
Yeah, but yeah, he had a ton of injuries. I mean, still would just go out there and just dive all over the floor for the ball and just throw it all on the floor. It just was man. I've never seen anything like it. In some of those games, I would see him just get like clobbered by these big men too, and I would think, okay, maybe he's gonna work on that jumper. I mean, his jumper got a little bit better, but he was probably the definition of a volume shooter. He wasn't a great shooter, but he would get in rhythm and hit shots.
Yeah, rhythm. Rhythm's the best word for this guy. Once he got in that rhythm, he was deadly. I mean, you couldn't touch him. You couldn't defend him. I mean, like you said, the zone, sure. Did it work? Look, nobody's perfect. He's going to have off nights. Jordan had off nights. My God, despite what anyone says, Jordan is human. I know it's hard to believe. Hard for me too, because I'm a massive fan. I know you are as well. But he'd be the first one to tell you I'm human, man. I had off nights. I mean, Iverson's the same way, dude. He had off nights, but more often than not, you could depend on him. He was in the trenches. I don't know of anybody that played with Iverson that ever complained. If they did, shame on them because he's going to war with you. He's down there with you. He's not the pampered all-star main event guy who rolled up in the brand new Bentley and he doesn't want to get his hands dirty during the game. He's just getting paid. That's not him. I mean, it was street ball at its finest. He would get down and dirty if he had to. And like I said, man, he's going to war with his team. There's no wonder why guys that play with him over the years have such mad respect for him, man. I can totally see it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's why I think a lot of players respected him um, in that era, and a lot of players were inspired by him. Um, yeah, it's so crazy because everything he was doing at the time was looked at in such a negative light, whether it be just the way he dressed. I mean, all the tattoos, because that just wasn't a thing at the time. You didn't
Right.
see players with a ton of tattoos. You didn't see players even with something as simple as just having the braids. You're just used to seeing guys that are clear cut, clean cut guys. Um, and just when you look at basketball now, and almost everybody in the league has tattoos.
Right.
Um, and now, it's just accepted. But when he was doing it, it was just seen as like, what is this guy doing? He just looks, what is it? He looks like a thug. That was a lot of what people were trying to throw on him. He was a thug or he's a criminal. And I mean, coming in the league as you know, a convict at the time, that just gave them more ammunition. But it's just so crazy that he he had all of these things going against him, whether it be his size, whether it be, you know, what happened coming out of Hampton with the incident in high school, and or just all of these perceptions against him, and he still managed to make it all the way that far and become MVP and play against a Lakers team that was easily the favorite that year and win a game. I don't know if people remember, but everybody thought they were going to get swept.
Yep.
He came out and won that first game. I think they were up 15 points at halftime in that game.
And I remember following them, and I was okay. So I've told the story before of why I'm a Vikings fan was because of Randy Moss. I'm a Sixers fan because of Iverson, and I haven't stopped pulling for them. I just stayed when he left, and then ultimately retired later. I mean, I stayed because of him, because there was something about his play. I was a Jordan fan first, and when Jordan moved on, I went straight to Iverson. The Sixers became my team, and I followed everything they did. And yeah, you're right. They were completely counted out, and then they came out and blew that first game out, man, out the water. Just holy God, it was like turning a switch. These guys. I mean,
Yeah.
unluckily for everybody who supported them, they didn't manage to pull it out that year. I mean, I don't know that they had a. I can't say they didn't have a chance because that first game showed they did have a chance, man.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about I don't remember what the score was at halftime, but I thought if I'm remembering it correctly, they were up 15 points. Or maybe I'm misremembering it and the Lakers were up 15 points. I don't remember. But they came into the last few minutes of this game, and you had, Tyronn Lue was on them at the time. Tyronn Lue chasing Iverson all over the court, holding him a lot, by the way, grabbing his arms, pulling his jersey.
Yes.
Um, and like at the end of this game, this guy scores 7 straight buckets to put them away.
Bless.
Like he just and I after watching that game, I was like, he's gonna do it. He's gonna beat the Lakers. I just with the optimist in me, I was like, he's gonna do it. I just feel like he's gonna do it because it was just this ultimate David versus Goliath thing where he didn't look like he should have been able to win that first game, but he somehow did it. And I was like, he can do it, I believe. And of course, they end up losing the next 4 straight. But I mean, just the fact that he made it that far with that team and achieved so much in that year, I mean, it's gonna go down in history.
Absolutely. And him driving the lane, dunking on Shaq under the net. I mean, how many again, go back to how many people can say that they, Shaq 7 foot tall with his hand in above your head and then in your face, and you dunk on him. And then he dunking on Kobe. Like, dude, shut up.
I mean, yeah, I mean, of course, you've got the trademark of that game is the crossover on Tyronn Lue, hits the shot, steps over him.
Oh,
It's just I mean, at that time he just was one of the coolest players to watch. I mean, it wasn't just that he was entertaining. He just had this confidence about himself for his size that was just like, no, this guy can do it. He can do anything.
and you do that in college. That's a technical right there. 'Cause the way he stepped over him, I loved it. I thought it was great. I didn't think it was too much of anything bad. I saw that and I'm thinking, man, they're gonna blow a whistle on. They're gonna blow a whistle on. They did. It was great because it was
In
just yeah. I mean, he
in
didn't.
LA, right?
Yes.
In LA.
Yeah, you think they would have called that, man, but they totally didn't call it, and I was so happy they didn't because like he didn't trash talk him. He could have.
I
Get
mean,
out of my way.
they wouldn't call holding on Tyronn Lue in that game for nothing. So
No.
I would have been really surprised if they just called taunting on him after that. But I mean, man, you talk about what that's just wild. Watching this kid hold him all game and try and stay with him, and they kept acting like he was playing such a great defense on him. And I think he had like 48 points in that game. He had 48 or
Dude.
49 points in that game, and
Yeah.
watching him just end the game that way, stepping over him was just it was an all time moment. And this just to go back to just who Iverson is and the perception of him. I remember watching an interview years later where he was saying, I regretted doing that because, I didn't want people to look at Tyron like he was lesser, like he's a good dude. It was just in that moment, it's me or you, and it's me at this moment, it's me. And it was never, I never wanted to make him look bad or, make it into a personal thing.
I don't know, man. I get what he's saying. But it's kind of like the old adage of you don't want to be on a poster for the wrong reason, right? You don't want to be the guy that's getting dunked on. That's a bad way to be on a poster. But I mean, it happens. Would Tyronn Lue have done the same thing? Well, I don't know if he could even answer that. Like Iverson said, it was the moment. It was what, like I said before, this guy went to war. He didn't go to war to make friends. He didn't go to war to play nice. Like he went to war to win. I mean, I don't think we give these guys enough credits, a lot of them, for actually wanting to win the game. Like that's the point here.
Yeah, I think the Tyronn Lue story he tells in his Hall of Fame speech is also great. But it just goes to show you just how likable Iverson is and how humble he is.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and brought this team together. Man, I look back on that team. God, it's so fun to watch. Do you think all right, so they won the first game. Man, my hopes were high. I was so excited. I went to work the next day and I worked with a couple of guys we've been talking about it. I'm like, who watched the game? And they're like, yeah, we know. We saw it. That was great. I was like, I know, right? And I was so pumped up. And then they dropped the next four, which sucked. Do you think that had more to do with them or more to do with the Lakers in terms of the Lakers were that good or the Sixers maybe were just too young of a team? What was going on there?
They just didn't have the firepower to beat a team like that. You're going against two Hall of Famers. Kobe's eventually going to be a Hall of Famer. You're going against two Hall of Famers on this team. You're going against a guy that has already coached Michael Jordan to 6 championships. It just was too much for them. Again, just the fact that they managed to pull out one game was crazy because nobody expected them to win a game.
Shaq, Kobe, Derek Fisher, Robert Ory, Tyronn Lue, Rick Fox. I mean, again, well-built teams tend to win championships with the right coach at the helm, and they were on track. This was their third championship this year, I think, because they won 99, 2000, and then 2001. I think because didn't they win right after did they win right after Chicago?
No,
Because
the Spurs won right after Chicago.
that's right. That's right. So maybe this
Um,
was their second championship in a row.
I think that was their second championship.
Yeah, that sounds right. Go back for a sec to, and I love the point you made that you brought up about his image. So Dennis Rodman caught all kinds of grief. A lot of it he caught on himself. I'm sure he would tell you that too. A lot of it was not deserved, but the spotlight was on him because of, he's Dennis Rodman. But not only Rodman, but then transition to Iverson. Like you said, the tats, the hair, the baggy clothes. I mean, the NBA instituted a dress code because of Iverson, right? I mean, he was the reason they did that in the first place.
Right.
I mean, it seems, I don't know, man. I don't want to say I'm split on this because I believe a guy should be an individual. I don't think he should be restrained unless he's being disrespectful to someone, which I don't think he was. I don't think he ever was. But I'm kind of split because I can see the idea of we want our players to be professional and look professional, but at the same time, it does kind of feel like we want to control you. We need to put you under our thumb. I mean, I don't know, man. I don't like that part of this. I mean, if that's where this is going, then I'm not down with that. But I can see the idea of we want our players to look. I mean, this is a business. They all tell you that. NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, NHL. This is a business. It's business. We're all businessmen, and they treat us like that. They're the owners of businessmen. It's just a business. But then they institute the dress code. I can see why they would, but dude, were they? Do you think they were targeting him too much? Did they do it just because of him? You think?
Um, I think I think there was a perception, of course. In some ways, I understand it because part of being an adult and having adult job means you have to conform in some ways. You can't just dress the way that you want. Everybody has a responsibility, and that's a place of privilege to sit in as a basketball player. You make millions of dollars. Of course, you can just come and dress as you want because they're not going to tell you to go home. Um, but I can't just go to like my regular day job and dress however I want and look however I want. We should be able to, but that's just not how the not how the world works.
Right.
Um, but and so on some ways, on some levels, I get it, but at the same time, these are ball players. It's like, you're trying to control their image because you think it means something to you as a league and you think it changes, this perception you've made of your player for basketball. And I think because basketball is such a big inner city thing, um, trying to limit guys that look like Iverson was ridiculous because in a lot of ways it helped them. You had a lot of guys that he inspired from places that he grew up in, that grew up in the same upbringing as him, that decided, no, I can be a ball player too, and I can be just like Iverson. A lot of those guys are in your league now, and they are, making you a lot of money. So it's like
Right.
you kind of can't don't you can't have it both ways, right? You can't decide, oh, I want to restrict this, but also, be able to exploit it and make a lot of money on it. Because that was also the thing. Iverson was a lot of controversy for them, but he made them a lot of money as well.
Very true, and it's the old adage of if the player's a millionaire, the owner's a billionaire. He'll make more money for the team than he'll probably make from the team. I mean, there's a lot of truth to that statement, and I think that's, of course, true of Iverson. You're right, man. He did inspire a lot of kids who were able to look at him. God, dude, I keep going back to the CM Punk thing. I can't help myself. I mean, how many guys were inspired by Punk? Not so much, well, I don't have to have a body to be a wrestler. I don't mean that, but like he was tattooed up. But he was mainstream. He wasn't tattooed up and a dastardly mustache twirling heel with Kevin Sullivan as his manager. I have an image. I have to. No, no, no. He was just a mainstream, regular, everyday guy who happened to have a bunch of tattoos, did things his way, called his own shots. I mean, yeah, man. I again, back to the dress code thing. I think a lot of that was, like I said, I'm split on it. I can see why they would want to, but at the same time, it does seem hypocritical. He played what, quarterback in high school, I think. And,
Quarterback and safety, I think.
yeah, yeah, and even played some defense too. Like, dude, he thought he was going to be a football player. Talk about a different world and a different NBA. Had Iverson stuck with football and did not go to basketball, that's a crazy alternate reality right there.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, again, probably one of the most influential basketball players of his time. I mean, there's so many guys. You can look at LeBron James right now. He wears a headband and an arm sleeve, and he's covered in tattoos, just like Iverson, and he's the face of
Yes.
the league right now.
I can't sit here and tell you that I follow Iverson on Twitter, but I can't tell you I know what he's up to right now. Why doesn't he have a job in the NBA? You think he's not interested in coaching, or he's not, I mean, I don't know about head coach, but assistant coach, at least part of someone's staff in Philly, maybe. I mean, is he doing anything that I'm not aware of?
I know he was doing that big three thing for a while when he was playing a little bit. Um, I know he's like a lifetime Reebok ambassador. Um,
Right.
but yeah, I don't think he's doing anything related to basketball. But that's kind of just who he is. And he just looks like one of those guys that just you know flash in the pan moment, and once it burned out, he's done. It just looked like his entire personality, and I mean his play style. Honestly, he put so much into putting maximum effort into certain games. Once his athleticism started to go, it was like that's kind of it.
You know, we talked on the Bulls podcast about what a shame it is that Jordan is not part of the Bulls franchise to this day. How do you think it is in Philly? You think that they have the same thoughts about AI? Like, man, why is he not involved with the franchise? I don't think it's anything on Philly's end in terms of the team. I think it's just he's not. I guess he's just not interested, man.
Yeah, but I mean, you talk about a city that like he's beloved in Philadelphia.
Oh yeah,
Beloved. I mean, he's got to be one of the most beloved Sixers players of all time. And to go back to the Jordan stuff and not seeing him here as much, and not seeing him as a part of the organization outside of working in the front office is a drag sometimes. But I don't feel the same with Iverson. I feel like Iverson is such a big part of the organization and why people want to play there. Um, he might not be in the front office, but I would say that he contributed a lot to the legacy of the team.
yeah, I agree with that. It's kind of the thing about there was not a Michael Jordan before Michael Jordan, and there wasn't a Michael Jordan after Michael Jordan. I kind of feel the same way about Iverson. You're right. He inspired a bunch of guys that came after, but there's only ever going to be one AI, only ever going to be one answer. I mean, again, I'm going into my head thinking of since him, who have we seen that hustles, that rebounds, that steals, that plays with a crazy amount of heart, puts the team on his back, doesn't care about injury, plays hurt, does everything he has to do in order to keep himself going, keep himself on the court, keep his team winning, at least keep his team in the hunt for a playoff. I mean, dude, I got nobody. I got no one that checks all the boxes like he did. Dude, thank goodness he moved on from football because he was born to play this game. He was born to be in the NBA, man. I mean, you see a guy that good and that talented, that was not an accident. He was supposed to play in the NBA, a higher power at some point, predetermined. Allen Iverson is supposed to be NBA Philadelphia 76er, man. Like, yeah, I don't know. They broke the mold after this guy, dude. It sucks to talk about this but I kind of not kind of, I totally led the show off with this. Not because not because I wanted to do a controversy part, because for me there's not any. But again, I go back to we talk about practice stuff, and I get it. And him looking back on it, and him in the Iverson documentary, which you turned me on to, which is excellent, by the way, kids. I highly endorse it. It's on IMDb, so go check it out. But he talked about that presser in which a very close friend of his had just died. And he was stressed out and he was dealing with the press. They had just lost the game and they stuck him in that room with reporters that he didn't want to be in front of. And in the NBA, you have to talk to the reporters. You have to do press. It's like NFL. Dude, if you don't talk, they fine you for it.
Yep.
Man, that was all a terrible mix for a press conference that went south really quick. I don't want to say they set him up, but it was set up for him to fail in that moment.
Yeah, I feel like he was misinterpreted. Um,
Yeah.
I feel like it was a very easy way to paint him as somebody that didn't want to do the work and didn't want to be there. Um, and I just didn't think it was fair. And of course, at the time, I was in high school when Iverson was at his peak. 2001, I think that was like my freshman year of high school.
Mhm.
Um, and so I always had to get the lectures from, some adult somewhere that when I said I was an Iverson fan of, oh, why you shouldn't look up to this guy. And so every time he would do something like this, and every time someone would see him fall in some way, I would have to hear about it. And, at the time I was just like, I think people know what he meant. I think he's just an easy target for people. And when later on, why he was really upset that, he had he had a family member that passed away. Well, not family member, but a good friend that passed away. And, with so many other things going on, like they were threatening to trade him at that time. And his whole thing was like, look, I give you guys everything. Everything. I put it all out there. I came out of several of these playoff runs with numerous injuries. I give you guys everything. And we're talking about practice. Why are we talking
Yeah.
about practice right now? And
He's a,
so I got it. I understood it.
and he's 100% right. And I love in the doc when he talks about that moment, and he said, how would I have been first team All NBA? How would I have been Rookie of the Year? How would I have been Finals MVP or MVP of the year for the league if I never practiced? Of course I practiced. I practiced all the time. That was his point. Like, my God, did you call me in here for this to make me feel like a child? Again, I'm not going to sit here and say, well, they meant to do this. God, it felt like they were talking down to him. And I'm sure the guy was just legit asking a question because he wanted to know the answer. But man, it felt like, I don't know, belittling him in some regard. I don't know. Maybe I'm taking it too personal now. I don't know. But man,
It did it because it felt a little trivial. And I mean, I get you have to answer certain questions if you got to answer for certain things when you make mistakes. And for him, not showing up to practice sometimes or being late, um, you got to answer for that. But at the same time, you got to answer to people in the organization. I don't feel like he owes us as viewers answers for that. That has nothing to do with us, our enjoyment of watching the game.
so we spent this entire show talking about Iverson and the team and everything, but we haven't mentioned Larry Brown. Dude, talk to me about Brown and Iverson. Are they as important of a combo as Jordan and Jackson?
For sure. I don't think Iverson has that MVP season without Larry. I don't think the Sixers make it all the way to the finals without Larry. Um, and I mean, it seemed like they had like a love hate relationship at times. They butted heads a lot, but I definitely think that Iverson respected him, and I think he doesn't get nearly as far at that point in his career without Larry. Larry was coach of the year that year, right?
Yes, I think so. Yeah, they won everything that year except the title.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah, I agree. I think he found the right guy. I mean, and Brown found the right player for sure. Um, just good stuff, man. Like they just meshed together. Larry understood him and understood what he was about, understood what he brought to the table, understood the kind of heart he had and the kind of player he was, and got the best out of him. Yeah, they did butt heads, probably more so than Phil and Michael ever did. But man, they were. I think you're right, dude. I don't think the Sixers get and Iverson has said as much. We would not have gotten that far. I would not have been the MVP were it not for Larry Brown. I mean, Brown just had something special, and especially with Iverson. Uh, that's important. Getting the right guy at the head of the game. I can't stress that enough. I think a lot of times fans will look at the players and see the money and the dollar signs and the image and the and magazine covers and videos and whatnot. They think, well, that's why they're winning. Nah, not necessarily. Natural raw talent and great ability is fantastic, but you got to have somebody directing the chaos and organizing everything, and that's what Brown did for Iverson. A mentor like he had with John Thompson earlier, a guy that was there for him. I don't know, man. I think you could directly link the best players that ever played this game with the best coaches, and I think, dude, that can't be a coincidence, right?
For sure. I think most of the best players in this league have, managed to hook up with a good coach or, a franchise that's paired those two together and got good results. Um, yeah, I mean, it's just a shame that they just weren't able to win a championship that year. What can you do? They just came up against the Goliath of a team and, and Shaq and Kobe.
And for if you're the Lakers at that time, you're thinking, well, they got Iverson, they got a good team, but nah. And then they lose that first game, and it's like, this may not be such an easy ride after all. You know what I mean? And it's not like Philly laid down after that. I mean, they didn't lay down. They lost the series, but my God, Iverson kept coming to play, man. What about the Sixers owner? You talk about a character, man. He owned the team for I think 3 years. I want to say 98 through 2002, maybe
Oh,
4 years.
are you talking about Pat Crochet?
Yes,
Yeah, he is he the owner or president? I think he's president at the time.
maybe that. Okay, that's what it was. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, big time character. Like I can't think of like that era of Sixers basketball without Pat. And just you're talking about the kind of guy that gave Iverson like free free reigns in some way and actually believed in him. Um, he was just such an out there guy when you just look at Pat like he's like he doesn't look like he doesn't look like a basketball exec at all when you first see him. Um, just that pairing of him and Iverson, when you look at them together, even when Iverson came and they retired his jersey and they were standing in a locker room together, it just was like they just look they just don't look like they fit. It's hilarious.
And he kissed him on the cheek, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was good stuff. I love that guy. There's just something about that personality. I don't know how you could hate on a guy like that. I mean, wears hard on his sleeve, but it's a smart business guy. I mean, yeah, man. You're right. It's God, they had such a mix of good talent, young talent, veterans. Um, my freaking memory was a bit fuzzy there, but I was wanting to say that Andre Iguodala was with him then, but he came the season after, didn't he?
Um, he ended up playing with Iguodala. Did he play with Iguodala when he came back to the Sixers later?
See, I was thinking they got Andre the year after. So they got him in 2002. I could be wrong.
No, I think because I think they
Maybe it
drafted
was before.
Iguodala like I think they drafted Iguodala like one of his either his last season there or when he came because I know he was there. Iguodala was still there when he came back.
Right. That's
Um,
right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
so I want to say maybe they drafted him the year after he left or the year his last year with the team. I'm misremembering it, but I remember they used to call him AI 2.0.
Yeah, that's true. God, he was a good player, man. Did he eventually got a ring, didn't he? Didn't he go somewhere and win a championship?
Yeah, Golden State Warriors.
There you go.
He's got two championships. And Finals MVP.
Oh my God. That shows you how I'm not up to date on the current product.
Yeah, Finals MVP in their first championship.
Yeah, I mean he did very well for himself, but yeah, I just remember him. The combination of him and Iverson was fun to watch, man. Because you had Iverson in the veteran role and Iguodala who just yeah, I remember him. I think he won the dunk competition that year, and I just remember being floored because he did that. He ran from behind the backboard and came around the front, and I had never seen that dunk. But I don't think anyone ever tried that dunk before. The guys try it all the time now, but at the time, he just barely missed hitting his head on the bottom of it. I'm like, man, this guy's special, man. Just
uh, yeah. So I'm looking at it now. He got drafted in '04. Um,
oh wow, that was later, yeah.
so I think that was around Iverson's last few years with the team, and he was still there when Iverson came back to the team later on.
So, from one weird kind of, I don't want to say down point, but misunderstood moment in the press conference to what, in my opinion, is a down point the way everything ended for this guy. I messaged you the other day after I'd watched the doc because it had really brought home the memory for me of God, this guy was disrespected on his way out. The fact that he spent that entire year with the phone never rang. I mean, whatever problems he had in his personal life, whatever problems he had with the law. That stuff was long over, I think. I mean, dude, why did no one take a chance on this guy in the end?
I I think it was a mix of things. I think he had lost that athleticism and that explosiveness that he used to have. Um, he was never, like I say, he was never a sharpshooter. He was a volume shooter at best. So, you know, he his offense, needed him to have the ball in his hand a lot. Um, so I think that was just daunting for a lot of guys. And then you have all of the controversy around him. Whether warranted or not. I think a lot of teams didn't want to take that on. When he left the Sixers, he had some pretty good seasons. It's not like he fell completely off. I mean, when he left the Sixers, he was still averaging around 25, 26 points a game. Um, and I thought he looked good on Denver those 2 years he was there. I think it was 2 or 3 years. Playing with Carmelo Anthony, he looked pretty good. I thought that was probably his most efficient in terms of his shot selection, and his percentages were up. Um, I don't know. I don't know what happened with Denver and why they decided to move him. But once he went to Detroit, that was kind of the beginning of the end because he didn't play that much for Detroit, and I think he ended up somewhere else after that. Memphis. He ended up on Memphis, and then
Memphis, yes.
then he ended up going back to the Sixers for a little bit. But yeah, you would have thought. I mean, the at the age he stopped playing, he's still really young. He was only like 35 when he stopped playing.
Right.
34, 35. Um, he still had a few more years in him. I thought he could have. I thought you could have put him on another team, and he could have been a decent role player. And I don't know. I didn't like the way it ended. I felt like he, in some ways, was his own demise, and in some ways, I felt like people wanted to see him fail. Um, I don't know. It was a mix. It was a mix of two. I think.
You think it's the nature of his position and the way he played, because all the things that made him so special, his defense, his ability to steal the ball, his ability to get up and down the court in the blink of an eye, and rush back on defense and get back down the court again. All the things that made him special are the things that can impact the player negatively as he ages, because he is going to lose a step. So
Yeah.
did he kind of lose who he was at the time? And you can you take that guy and make him a role player toward the end, or is that even possible at that point?
Yeah. See, I don't know because the thing is, he was so quick. He forced you to respect his first step. So it's like once he doesn't have that same speed and explosiveness, he has to figure out a way to be effective. And that's why I said to his own detriment. And I feel like he was part of his own demise. He didn't work enough on the rest of his game to change his game and alter his game in those last few years. Um, like you look at the greats and like Jordan, for example, and how much Jordan worked on his jumper and
Right.
perfected his jumper so that he didn't have to rely on being a finisher as much. And Kobe did the same thing towards the twilight of his career. He worked on his jumper a lot, and he became really effective with that jumper. Um, and I just don't think Iverson did enough of the work to adjust his game.
That's a great point. Maybe didn't do enough to give himself longevity. Maybe it was, I think you put it earlier, he was just, I got to win now, and I've got to go right now. And yeah, he's the guy out front. He's the face of the franchise. He's the face of the team. It's win at all costs. It's do or die, and it's right now. Go, 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 now, now, now. I don't know how you dial that back. And when you know that Father Time's catching up to you as it does to all of us, you can't fight that. I mean, yeah, unless you, like you said, unless you get a more well-rounded game, then you live by the sword, die by the sword. Maybe it's just one of those things, man, where he couldn't continue with because of the nature of his own personal game. Maybe that's why he couldn't continue. But man, I don't know, dude. If I'm an NBA franchise at that time that had the money to spend, that had a losing record, but had rookies that could learn, how do I not spend that money, for crying out loud? How do I not, for Allen freaking Iverson, man? That, for all the arguments I just made as why he's not the same guy, I just don't know if I don't sign him. I don't know. That seems crazy to me, man.
Yeah, I think that there were teams that wanted to give him something because he did so much for basketball, but I just I just don't think at towards the end of it that there was it didn't seem like there was a willingness once he went to Philadelphia, because I think Philadelphia would have very much allowed him to be there and allowed him to retire there. I mean, he essentially retired a Sixer anyway, but I think he could have stayed there for another year or so if he had the passion in it to continue playing.
And I'll tell you this, the way that he left is weird too. Like, he didn't retire in front of a, I mean, they gave him a farewell later and they hung his jersey in the rafters, and thank goodness they did. Of course they did, because it's Iverson. But he had that presser and there was nobody there but reporters, and he was choked up and he was talking about, this is a happy day. This is not a sad day. And I'm like, dude, I'm looking into your eyes. You are not happy. This is not a happy day. I don't know how it struck you, but that's how and my heart went out to him, because I thought, you are not happy, man. You can say this stuff, but that you don't mean it. You're disappointed in the league. You're disappointed maybe in yourself for whatever reason, and you can't believe that no one's gonna. I don't know. Maybe I'm reading it wrong. That no one's gonna take a chance on you. I mean, to me, that was a very disheartening thing to watch.
Yeah, I can see him being sad in that moment because of everything he did and not getting another chance. But I think it was also a lot of stuff going on in his personal life, and he just he just has always had so much going against him in his personal life. And again, I think that is just the triumph of Allen Iverson, but again, it's one of his biggest drawbacks in some ways as well. Because I mean, yeah, you just look at his story coming out of high school. You come straight out of high school, and you have like this big, huge state championship win, and right after that, you're in trouble and end up going to jail, which you never should have ended up in jail. That was ridiculous miscarriage of justice
Yes.
to throw him in jail for something so minor, and to try and punish him so harshly for that was just ridiculous. Um, so he had that weight on his shoulders coming out of high school. Then you come into college and leave college, and again, it's just all these things that are just following you your entire life. He didn't have a great upbringing. He had people in his life that wanted him to succeed, but man, it just seemed like it was just always something with him. It was always something in his personal life.
Chaos between him and his wife, and stuff that made the headlines that, I think in his words, it's none of your business. And he's completely right. Uh, I never need to know about these guys' personal lives. I don't care who they are. It's not necessary for me to know. I watch them for their game, how they do on the court. That's why I watch. I mean, yeah. I mean, he was a magnet, for better or worse. Do you think that he is, as we sort of wrap it up here, final thoughts, I guess. Do you think that he is given the respect he deserves when people talk in reverent tones about Jordan and Pippen, and Magic and Bird, even the Pistons of Isaiah Thomas? I mean, do you think that he is given what he deserves, or do you think that he flies under the radar because of who he is?
I think he is now. I think it took a minute. I think him being away from the game for a while allowed people to appreciate him more. Um, and I think it's because he's so well respected among current players. Um, Again, you can just see his influence all over the league and just how guys dress and just everything throughout the league. The fact that people are still, after all this time, wearing sleeves, almost 20 years later, uh, you could just see it. You could still see all his influences on basketball, and I just, when you look at how guys like Kevin Durant speak of him, and it's just, I mean, the fact that he is known throughout the league as Bubba Chuck. Like, no, a lot of people still just call him Chuck or Bubba Chuck. It's like, and I think that's why he's given his flowers. I think regardless of any of his accomplishments or you know the crazy numbers and stats you can put out there, I think Iverson, the guy, is respected.
I agree with that. I think you're right. I think it did take some time to kind of come full circle, and years away from the league has helped him. I agree with you there. I want to get your last word here on AI, but I'm gonna pitch this to you as you're giving it to me here. Uh, do you think that in terms of a relationship between a player and a city, is it as important as Jordan and the city of Chicago in terms of Iverson and Philly?
I think it is because I think he put Philly back on the map. I think he made Philly. Uh, I think he made Philly a staple at a time where they didn't really have anything else going. Um, I mean, when you look at like at that time in the '90s and those teams that became like a cultural thing, not just like winning, just culturally, it's cool to be a Philadelphia fan. He definitely made it cool to be a Sixers fan in the same way that Penny Hardaway and Shaq made it cool to be a Magic fan when nobody was a Magic fan.
Absolutely. And I think we've both kind of hit the points here in terms of why he was so special to the league, why he was such a great player, why he meant so much to so many guys, and continues to mean so much to so many guys. I personally will tell you this as we wrap up. I want to see him in the NBA in some capacity. I don't care if it's color analyst. I would love to see him at a table with a couple of other guys and just being real, not being scripted, not reading lines, not reading a teleprompter, but just he has so much knowledge and he has so much heart for the game. I would love to see him come back in some capacity, even if it was just as a broadcaster. I just, give him a live mic and let him talk. I think it would be refreshing. I think it would bring eyes to the game that maybe guys like me who did watch during his time but have disconnected since then, those people might come back. It's hard to tell. I think he has a spot in the game, and I don't know what that means moving forward. If he's happy without it, go with God, man. Be happy and enjoy your family and enjoy the spoils of war because you've earned it. Hope you're healed. I hope you're healed, and I hope you're moving around great. Because man, you put yourself through hell, right? The game puts you through hell. But yeah, if there was ever a spot to open up, I would love to see him back. I guess maybe I just miss AI, and I miss those days when it comes to memories of the NBA during that time. He represents so many great memories for me. He's the reason why I stuck with the Sixers. So I don't know what more you can say about the guy. He did leave his mark, as you said, on the league. And if there's anybody that deserves respect for that and deserves respect for everything he did for the game of basketball, it's definitely the answer, Allen Iverson. And that, kids, is Allen Iverson. Hey, thanks for listening to the show. Check out our social media on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at 6M Podcast. We'll see you next time.